Right, so whilst Israeli settlers were busy destroying olive groves in the occupied Palestinian territory of the West Bank, well away from Gaza, I might add, demonstrating what the genocidal apartheid regime is really all about, the final of the Eurovision Song Contest was going on, and of course it has been an absolute embarrassment of how badly the organisers of the Song Contest, the European Broadcasting Union, the EBU, have fallen over themselves to accommodate Israel, to basically do for them what they did for Ukraine previously, ignoring the genocide they are meting out in Gaza, doing exactly what the Israel lobby would want them to do, basically flashing up Israel's self-declared victimhood up in neon lights. And you might be thinking, Damo, why are you covering what is ostensibly supposed to be a night of ridiculous entertainment, an escape from all things political? Then I'm afraid to say, despite how you might consider the contest and how you might believe it to be not political, and certainly the contest does claim that themselves, it never has been. Voting so often goes along the lines of political alliances, but if you thought just the fact that Israel had been admitted and ardently defended by the programme makers was the big story, was the main political point being made, if still being denied, that the singer Israel had put up was being booed and that garnered more sympathy, certainly amongst Zionists I dare say, then there's another point that I haven't seen widely talked about, which is definitely worth raising because, frankly, in my view, it blows every single claim by Eurovision to be outside of politics clean out of the water. Right, so last night was the final of Eurovision, and normally I'm not above indulging in the mad cheese fest that it is. It can be a bit of fun, be a bit of escapism. It's just a bit mad, isn't it? But it isn't apolitical. Anybody claiming it is just not being very honest or is a bit naive. Because it never has been, and this year's especially, which I of course boycotted like so many others did on the grounds that the Israeli state had been allowed to perform, thanks to the EBU, the European Broadcasting Union, despite the genocide they are meting out in Gaza, was hypocrisy writ large. Because of course when the show was all about Ukraine previously, Russia's invasion, those attacking Ukraine, Russia and their anti-democratic dictatorship neighbours Belarus of course, were both banned from taking part in the song contest in solidarity with Ukraine. That's political. Now you can be for or against, or take a somewhat neutral stance on this, however you like, as the EBU certainly keep claiming they are. I've certainly covered the conflict there in my own content previously, and I've always taken the view that the Russian-Ukraine conflict is a somewhat grey area. There's no good versus evil story here, really, because on one hand you have Russia invading another country, which of course cannot be supported. War is never the answer either. Yet there's also no denying Russia was provoked to an extent by NATO expansionism eastwards, something that was promised to Russia back in the day wouldn't happen if they assented to the Berlin Wall coming down in the early 1990s. It still happened though. NATO poked the bear, if you like. Now, Israel and Gaza is a totally different situation though. There's no grey area here. It's actually very black and white. Since 1967, Palestine has been occupied territory by Israel. Israel control the entry and exit of stuff into those territories. Everyone living in those territories does so at Israel's will, if you like, especially Gaza, which they have now completely cut aid off to, and are verging on committing an historical moment of death and destruction, frankly, should they, as they keep threatening to, go all in on Rafah, where 1.6 million people are trapped and starving to death, with nowhere to go and no aid getting in. Palestine have opposed their occupation. Surely any of us, if we lived in occupied territory, if we had people ruling our lives and dictating our lives to us, would do the same. The formation of groups like Hamas was in response to that occupation, and whether you agree with their actions or condemn them. And again, I'll say here, just as I said in relation to Russia and Ukraine, violence is never the answer, and I certainly don't support the actions they've meted out any more than I support what Israel have done to their people. It never solves anything. Wars always end when peace talks are instigated. The problem we have here with the Israel-Gaza situation is that Israel are led by a guy in Benjamin Netanyahu, leading a coalition of the worst hard-right elements in Israeli political discourse, who as a consequence of that cannot afford to let this war end. You cannot therefore reason or negotiate with an Israeli government like that. They are an absolute global pariah right now, and more people, sensible people, people capable of rational thought for themselves, acknowledge the truth of this and are condemning their own leaders who continue to support that genocide, continue to enable it as well. And so Eurovision has rightfully, justifiably come in for fallout from that too. This isn't Russia and Ukraine. This is different. Making out that it is the same thing is gut-wrenching, vomit-inducing stuff, given the images we've seen more than enough of coming out of Gaza, but which will still come, and frankly needs to, so our anger doesn't cool. We can't afford to let it. There have, during the course of the song contest, been several incidents of censure against other nation contestants and other people involved choosing to walk away, given the EBU's unapologetic continued support for Israel. The incident with the Dutch contestant Joost Klein, for example, is probably the best known that's been going around and being discussed, certainly across social media. He who got barred from taking part in the final because of an incident where he apparently told a female camera woman that he didn't wish to be filmed. No physical altercation, just words. This was a camera woman, as several mainstream media sources have reported, which gives the indication that this is some member of Eurovision staff. Though footage has emerged of the Israeli contestant songwriter, Karen Pelez, having filmed Klein without his permission by making sure he was caught in the background, whilst she and one of their dancers basically had a giggle about doing it. Was this the incident Klein kicked off over in the end? That I can't confirm, but lots are certainly jumping to that conclusion. Clearly Pelez knew she was doing something she shouldn't be, but since when do Israel ever seem to get set boundaries, it seems? The Israeli contestant's designer, Itai Bezalali, also allegedly targeted other contestants critical of Israel, such as Greece's Marina Satti, who he tried to take a photo of backstage, and also targeted Ireland's Bambi Thug in the same manner as Pelez filmed Joost Klein, allegedly, at any rate, choosing to apparently misgender them and called them a monster. These were rule breaches. The EBU have apparently acknowledged them as such, but no action has been taken against them. Israel got a free pass again, it seems. Now, it's been an often asked question as to why Israel even compete in the song contest, given they aren't in Europe, a criterion that has continued to be watered down, frankly. Australia have since joined, haven't they? But when you consider most Israelis are white, despite being surrounded by people of racial descent who are absolutely not, who they oppress, white people of European descent no less. Take Benjamin Netanyahu himself as an example of that. His father, Benzion Netanyahu, was actually born Benzion Milikowski, and he was Polish, born in Warsaw. Israel is a land of settlers, after all, and remains so to this day. His father, incidentally, was a rabbi in the Zionist movement and was Russian, which offers me a bit of a segue at this point back to Israel's actual contestant in Eurovision, Eden Golan. It seems that despite Russia being banned from competing in Eurovision, if you happen to be a dual national Russian and are competing for Israel, well, that's just fine. Eden Golan, you see, was born in Kfar Saba in Israel to Russian parents, settlers. Ironically, her mother is of Ukrainian Jewish descent, as it happens, her father Latvian Jewish ancestry. From the time Eden Golan was 6 until she was 18, she was actually living in Russia, and is listed on her Wikipedia page. There's not a lot to go on research-wise on this person as Russian-Israeli. Now, perhaps being a dual national is a grey area again for the EBU. Maybe it offered them a get-out-of-jail-free card given Russia is boycotted. But to the eyes of the world, given she was representing one pariah state and his dual nationality of another widely regarded in the same light, this is Eurovision being anything but apolitical. And where one contestant having strong words with someone saw them get banned, the Israeli candidate was able to come out at the end of the show having been booed throughout proceedings because of who she represented, waving the Israeli flag and coming on to the song I Love It, I Don't Care by Swedish group Icona Pop, just to rub people's noses in it, frankly. How come she was allowed to do that then? Bambi Thug had Ogham writings, ancient Irish writings, on her face with messaging asking for a ceasefire. She was told she couldn't keep that on her face. She was made to take it off and they wouldn't let her go on stage. But Israeli flag and coming on to that song, and it's, you know, all this proceedings were of course being held in Sweden. Does seem to be a bit of a double standard going here, doesn't there? Anyway, unlike the Ukrainian contestant, however, Israel did not walk away with the win last night, though coming 5th was far higher than many will have liked. The winner was Swiss contestant Nemo, a country infamously neutral. There's probably some irony there, though Nemo was apparently the target of Israeli misdemeanor as well backstage. Israel did really well, got large vote shares from a lot of countries. 10 points from the UK, disappointingly, but I like to think that that was because so many boycotted it and only the Zionist lobby were actually watching and partaking. Certainly Labour Friends of Israel were jumping up and down and advocating people to vote for the Israeli contestant, again making a mockery of the contest having nothing to do with politics. Who does fund them again? Fundamentally, what this shows is we cannot back down, we cannot stop speaking out, because given literally any opportunity, even a song contest, there will be those who will use it to promote Israel and diminish what they are doing in Gaza and the rest of the Palestine-occupied territories. Indeed, hostage releases on both sides and a ceasefire could have been enacted already by now. The song contest could have been happening under a much better atmosphere if a deal Hamas had already agreed to had also been agreed to by Benjamin Netanyahu. But it wasn't, and it won't ever be, because as I said before, he cannot afford to let the atrocities he's begun end, because his grip on power depends on it, and peace in the region effectively depends on his removal at this point. I can see no other way, as I detail here in this video recommendation, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.